welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. This is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. And I have the distinct privilege of speaking to Andrew Bellingham today. Andrew was raised in the Welsh Valleys, growing up among wild and windswept hillsides and against the backdrop of the largest medieval castle in Wales. His childhood was filled with inspiring vistas that fed his love of fantasy. I love that. I have yet to go to Wales. I've been to England, I've been to Scotland. Wales is on the list. Moving to the city of Bath to pursue a degree in creative writing, Andrew began to further his passion for writing stories and creating worlds in earnest. He made friends with some fantastic writers along the way, involving himself in several collaborative works. After returning to the valleys of his childhood, Andrew has spent the last years working as a ghostwriter. When he isn't writing fantasy, science fiction, and romance novels, he can be found enjoying his days with his wife and 2 children. So thank you so much for coming on the channel today.
Oh, no worries. Happy to be here.
Yes, I had such a great time at the 20 Books conference where we connected talking to you all about ghostwriting because it's something that I think a lot of people don't know a lot about. But before we dive into kind of the specifics of what ghostwriting is and some of the pros and cons and all of that, can you tell us a little bit about how you first got into writing? Like, what's your story?
So my story is probably a bit of an outlier one for writing. I think most writers would start with the whole I had a passion for reading at a young age as their starting story. I'm ashamed to say my writing story began with a Nintendo 64 game which didn't arrive in time for Christmas.
There's no shame, no shame.
It, I was 14 years old and the N64 was, I don't know if it was all the rage. I think the PS2 was doing better at the time, but that's another story. But yeah, I was supposed to be receiving a particular game that year, Majora's Mask, and my parents did not know that this game needed a special kind of adapter. And this was in the days before you had next day post from Amazon or anything. So when it didn't arrive, it was kind of, well, there's no postal service for the next 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, well, that's my entire Christmas.
Oh, no.
And we were the kind of family who we didn't do really big budgets for Christmas. We were quite economical. So I had kind of blown my entire Christmas budget on this game because it was like the big game of the thing. So it was like, this was my one and only present for that year. So I found myself at quite a bit of a loose end on Christmas Day. And I just remember having nothing to do, going around the house or just being a bit mopey. And, 14-year-old, I was in proper teenage angst mode anyway. And I was like, what am I going to do with myself? And I don't even know why it happened, but I just got a piece of paper and sat down. I think it was in my room just with this piece of paper, and I just started penning this story down. And 2 weeks later, when the game cartridge thing that I needed to play the game came through, I just didn't stop writing. I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then I did eventually play the game. It was a great game as well, I should note. But I was surprised. I surprised myself with just how into writing I got from that. And yeah, it was. I'm going to do a corny line now, but it was the greatest gift for me that Christmas. The gift of writing that I gave to myself.
I mean, corny but true, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You gave yourself a place to go, adventures to go on, all those things that we as writers are able to give other people. You kind of gifted to yourself, which is really cool. That is an origin story that I haven't heard yet. So I love all the different ways that people get into this. I mean, I guess you could call it a profession, but it's not a profession for everybody. Just this passion, how everybody gets into it. So you worked for years primarily as a ghostwriter, and that's really what I want to dig into today. So for anybody who doesn't know, can you explain what a ghostwriter is? Like, just maybe dispel some of the myths that are out there. What does it mean to be a ghostwriter?
So I think when people think about ghostwriters, generally the first thing that most people go to is autobiographies, and most people know ghostwriters as someone who helps someone who's famous or semi-famous writing their biography. It's a writer giving their words to someone else's story. That's where most people seem to know ghostwriting from, but it does go a lot broader than that. So ghostwriting in its essence is you are a writer and someone else has a story, and for whatever reason, the reasons can vary wildly, they need someone else to write that story for them. You then, as the ghostwriter, step in and you offer your services to do the writing. And that can be a very, very broad process where you're involved with everything from start to finish. It can be, you can end up helping with the outlining of the story or novel or whatever it is. You can end up doing the editing and the after parts of it. You can end up being really, really tightly involved, or you can just be given the whole story and just be said, can you please write this? So that in essence is what ghostwriting is just someone else has a story that they want told. For whatever reason, they do not have the time or maybe even inclination or ability to do it, and they are paying you to bring that story to life on their behalf.
So do ghostwriters ever get recognition? I recently read a memoir by somebody who solved cold cases, and it was his name big, and then it said with somebody that I recognized as the one who must have actually written the majority of the book. So would that count as ghostwriting, or is ghostwriting strictly your name is not on this work?
So it really depends on the it's kind of like writers themselves. There's so many different people who want their work ghostwritten, and there are a million different contracts out there under the sun. Some people are very concerned with keeping the rights all to themselves, and you will never get your byline or name attached to the project in any way, shape, or form. You'll sign pieces of paper to make sure that doesn't happen and you can't talk about the project. There are plenty out there as well who are fine to give you an acknowledgement and credit for the book. It's very much one of the ones where there's no catch-all answer to that question. It really depends on who your client is and what they specifically want from the project. Me personally, in my ghostwriting career, I've not chased any name recognition on the works I've gone for, and that's opened up a lot more options and possibilities for clients as a result. But I can definitely see why people would want to try and get their name on there as well.
So what is the process if you want to be a ghostwriter? How do you find clients if there is not exclusively but largely this sense of secrecy about who the actual writer is? How do you make that connection, and what is the process like?
So for me, the when I first began, it literally started in a pub with just someone. I was at a writer's meet and greet, and just someone there was telling me about having started ghostwriting, and they there's always a certain amount of just who you know and just finding the right people at the right time, because as you said, it is a little bit secretive, this whole sort of world of ghostwriting. So in the very first instance, it was just the luck of a draw of I was at the right creative writing event at the right time. Someone just happened to mention, oh, you're really good. And I've been doing this thing recently where I had not heard of ghostwriting at this point. So I was like, really? People just take your story off you and just give you money? That sounds awesome. I like money. And it just developed into this conversation, and I got introduced to a few right people to know, and that allowed me to step into the process. But after a little bit of just starting out, you begin to find that a lot of it is online and actually quite easy to find, even for general writers who haven't been introduced. So if anyone's interested in getting into ghostwriting, I would recommend looking at any kind of website which offers freelancing services. So that would be things like Fiverr or Upworks, any kind of site like that where you can sell and promote yourself. There are usually people on there looking for ghostwriters who will put out their ads on there, and you can reply to them and get in touch that way as well.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask what sites were available. So yeah, I wouldn't think of going to Fiverr for ghostwriting services, but I guess that makes sense. So you get paid up front as a ghostwriter. It's usually not a royalty situation like it would be if you were publishing the work under your own name. Am I getting that right?
So again, it comes back to that sort of catch-all term of, a million different contracts under the sun, but typically it would be a case, as you described it, of you would talk about the project with the client first, you have your rates, there would be a negotiating period where you go back and forth about what the project is worth. Um, Generally, you get paid, or at least in my experience, you get paid by the word. So it's like, okay, if you want 100 words, that's $2. And thankfully, no one's ever wanted a book that short from me before. I don't think I could actually fulfill that. But
No, nobody's asked for
yeah,
some flash fiction.
no one's asked for flash fiction yet. That would be an interesting one for me. But yeah, so you agree your sort of dollars or pounds or whatever per word. You then go into the writing process, typically with the way I've worked, and one of the ways that I try and avoid anyone doing a kind of runner on me on a project is that the project will be paid over milestones.
Hmm.
So it'll be like, right, I've done the first 10,000 words. Here you go. Thank you very much. Here's another 10,000 words. Here you go. Thank you very much. And again, that sort of means that you're constantly working with the client. They can see what they are getting from you. They can ask for changes as you're writing. So it can be this very kinetic experience back and forth. And you don't have to worry about giving something in at the end and they say, right, well, right at the beginning, there was a problem which changed the whole book. And it's like, oh, great. Now I have to rewrite for 60,000 words. So having that sort of just simple, here's a set amount of words each week and being paid for that. Again, it's also protective for you if the client ever suddenly, because unfortunately, especially if you are on freelancing platforms, there are a couple of bad actors on there who will be just sort of like, oh, you finished the book, have you? Oh, thank you very much. Bye. And you
Yeah,
don't
it
want
sounds
that.
like that would be beneficial for both parties because then, like you said, you would get the assurance of actually getting paid in regular intervals, and
Hmm.
they would get the assurance that they're getting what they're paying for
Yeah,
before they have to, front all this money for something that maybe isn't what they had signed up for.
exactly,
So I
exactly.
I wouldn't have thought of that, but I'm sure, yeah, I would have learned to do that after, having one painful experience. So what are some other pros and cons of pursuing ghostwriting as your writing career rather than some more traditional ways of going about it?
Well, I think the first and biggest pro of ghostwriting is just that you can very quickly earn, I mean, as long as you're good at it and you do your job right, you can earn a decent living doing what you love, but without any of the aggravation of trying to juggle a regular day job.
Hmm.
Because you are doing what you love straight away. Just you wake up in the morning, what do I have to do today? Well, my work docket says I'm writing stories. Goody, yay. So there's that element to it that you are just making your day job your passion, which
Hmm.
is really, really good. It's You can, if you want, you can think of it as work experience while you earn. So
Hmm.
you know if there's one thing that's always said for writers in terms of improving our craft, one of the best ways of improving our craft is just write, 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 write. Just churn out all the words you can, and eventually you get better just through constant repetition of a theme. And then being paid to do that, well, that feels like a no-brainer to me, because you're not having to sort of squeeze in. I hear so many writers who have that whole thing of, oh, how do I fit in my 500 words a day? How do I fit in 1,000 words a day to get this done? And then when you make it your job, well, suddenly 8 hours of the day is dedicated to getting your 500 words in, your 1,000 words in. Okay, they aren't always yours. They are probably for someone else who you're paying for. But again, you're getting that experience and you're getting used to just writing constantly. You're getting your craft in, you're learning, and you're learning on someone's dime, which is just like great. I mean, obviously, you are giving them a very, very good product in return. Like, don't forget to do that part of it, but that is something that's good for it. And I think as well, ghostwriting is very good. I think I already talked a little about habits, but ghostwriting is very good for developing that writer's habit of just pushing out words, regardless of how your day is going or whether you're suffering from any kind of writer's block or anything like that. It's like you wake up in the morning, if you want to get paid for the day, you need to have words out. There's a very strong, trying to think of the right word here. I'm losing a writer losing words. How weird.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, but there's a very strong sense in which if you don't get your words out, you're not being paid for the day. It's not a pay by the hour kind of arrangement. You are paid by the words you produce each day. So if you're sat there at your computer and you're having a sort of a very, oh, woe is me writer's moment where it's just like, I cannot think right now. The words are just not coming. It's like, okay, the words aren't coming. Well, enjoy not eating for the next couple of days, I guess.
Oof.
It's like, okay, I better just write the words then. So you end up getting a bit of a tough skin to just sort of, I can't think of what words to put down. Where I'd say the con comes in is that some days you really can't get the words down. Like, as much as I would love to say that ghostwriting has given me this sort of defense and armor against just sort of flaking out on my word counts, there are just days, especially like if you wake up with a heavy migraine or there's something going on in your world, there's always things which will just topple you in the word counts. And that can be a bad time to be a ghostwriter, because again, you're being paid by the word. If you're, depending on how fast you're writing, then your rates per hour can kind of change by how much you're doing. Like on a really good hour, my best hours are usually spent writing about 2,000 words in an hour. And I really like that because that's a good amount down. It's not so fast that I've lost the plot in terms of what I'm writing. I'm not just writing garbage, but it's fast enough clip that I'm making a good amount of money per hour. But there can be times where, again, I'm prone to headaches personally. So if I've got a bad headache and I'm trying to get the words down, there have been times where I've had to look at things and go, right, we're 2 hours down and I'm on 500 words. So I've only made about $10 over 2 hours. So that can be a con which does hit you. I think the only other con with ghostwriting that I've discovered as well is that because you're making your craft and writing, I already said it was a great thing that you're making writing like your whole day, like you're giving yourself the whole day to write. Where it can become a double-edged sword the other way is that your personal projects can sometimes suffer in this weird kind of duality way, where I think it's kind of like, for people who have writing, especially as a hobby early on, like, you always enjoy doing your hobby, but there's always times when, no matter how much you love your job, it will feel like work. And there's something that sometimes doesn't quite sit perfectly, where I've had a long day of ghostwriting. it's been a challenging day for whatever reason, but I've got my words out there. What am I going to do for rest and relaxation now? I'm going
Mm,
to write some more. And it's like, oh,
mm.
sometimes there's this weirdness of going out of the paid for ghostwritten work that you're doing and suddenly thinking to yourself, right, now I'm going to do the writing for myself now and spend more hours writing. And it's like at that point, like, I've been in Microsoft Word for way too long now.
Right. You need to just stand up and do something else, I would think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think it's sort of, it's funny how I've just realized both my two pros and two cons seem to be opposite ends of the same coin, but that really is how it feels sometimes.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that the biggest pro and the biggest con would be that you just need to write all the time. It's on good days, I'm sure it feels like, how exciting that you get paid for this at all. And then other days you're like, If only I could get paid twice as much because this is kind of a nightmare." But that's, just how it goes. So I have some follow-up questions. So you are somebody who has definitely trained himself to get those words down, like you said, barring something like a migraine or something that genuinely prevents you from doing that. What is one hack that you've kind of figured out when you're really not in that space, you're not feeling all that creative or eloquent or whatever, but you have to get those words down? Do you have some kind of, I don't know, I know some people, they light a candle or they play the same playlist, to kind of get them in the zone. Is there something like that that has helped you to just shift into that go time mode?
I mean, I'm a sucker for all of those things. I literally have over here my woodwicked candle ready to go at any moment.
Oh, I love
So,
that.
woodwicked candles are, this is not a sponsored video, I promise anyone watching, but woodwicked candles are fantastic because they have a nice crackle as they're going. So you get a
Nice.
little sound effect as it goes. So I really like having that. I also listen to a lot of background, just sort of, I think you would just call them noise rather than music.
Hmm.
I find music is very, I can get sucked into music way, way too easily,
Mm.
and it affects. I mean, this is no brainer. This is what music is, but it can affect my mood, and sometimes it can be very hard finding the right track to go with what I'm writing at any particular moment. So I usually favor on YouTube listening to either something very generic, like I'll just listen to cafe jazz
Mhm.
videos, which are just sort of like the most generic jazz music you can find, or even things like one thing which I've been listening to recently, which might only be pertinent to me because I've got a little bit of tinnitus with my hearing, but I listen to brown noise, which is just like,
Mhm.
it's just like this sort of weird whooshing sound that just sort of slightly cuts through the ambience and makes sure that sort of minor sounds here and there in the background kind of disappear out. And I find that really good.
Hmm.
Basically, it's anything I can listen to but don't hear
Hmm. That
kind of
just
thing
kind
will
of
just,
creates an environment that is insular, it sounds like, but not distracting. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So that for music, Candle is definitely a must. Trying to get away from just other people, also good, like, closing the doors, making sure my wonderful pets can't get into the room. Um, and Pomodoros as well. Pomodoros I find to be really good ones, especially because if you're at all competitive, you can chase word counts that way.
But then those are those twisting timers, right? Or
So you
or
can get them
close.
as twisting timers. I prefer to, you can online just find, if you just type Pomodoro into Google, there's a site called pomodoro.com or something like that. It's the first hit you get, and it is just literally a page that is a 25-minute timer.
Hmm.
You click start on it. I usually have it on a sidebar just in the sort of corner of my screen. it ticks down. As soon as you've done your first 25-minute Pomodoro, you get a 5-minute break. Then you do another 25 minutes, 5-minute break. You repeat that process 2 more times, and then you get a long 15-minute break. And I find Pomodoros are really good for, first of all, reminding me to get up and
Mm.
actually have breaks, because it can be very easy to forget about that. And there's nothing worse than getting up after 8 hours of writing and go, oh, I still have knees. Oh no.
Right. In my
That's
spine
not
is
being able.
suddenly not. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so having those breaks is good, but also I find Pomodoros for me particularly, just seeing that timer going down, and again, because of the relationship I have with word counts and how I get paid, I'm constantly sort of like trying to up my word count game during Pomodoro. So I end up almost playing like a game with myself where it's like,
Mm.
oh, I've only got 10 minutes left, but I'm at 775 words. Let's see if I can get to that golden 1,000 in the 25 minutes. And it's sort
Oh,
of like,
wow.
on good days, it can really sort of be a strong motivator having that there in the corner and just trying to outpace the clock.
So how many books approximately have you ghostwritten? I know you've done this for years, so
Yeah, that is a good question at this point, and it's one that honestly I don't know the answer to. Like I couldn't eat. I couldn't. Yeah, I really couldn't even guess at this point, because I could sort of go by averages, but when I first started out, I was slower, and I think it's one of the things that you have as a relationship with your ghostwriting, because you have to give it up to someone else,
mm,
and you don't have your name attached to it after it's gone out into the world. There's this kind of weird thing where you never forget about the stories you write. To say that is disingenuous, but it's not the same as sort of like having your personal written novels and going, oh yeah, I've written 12 novels, I've written 13 novels, because they're out there under someone else's name. You kind of just force yourself to forget about them
mm,
a little bit in the day to day, and it does kind of after a while blur like that, where you wrote them, you're proud of them, but you don't know how they're being received, you don't know how
mm,
they're being treated out there in the world, you don't know what author name it's under. And so
mm.
there's this kind of thing where every now and again you might just sort of, it might pop into your head, sort of like, oh, I remember writing that really good story, but it's a bit more dreamlike. It's sort of like,
Mm.
it's something that you might have done, but you no longer quite remember doing it. It's like you could have done it, but it's just sort of gone now, and it's just one of those things that's sort of out of your life.
Mm.
Kind of like that person at school who you remember being sort of friends with, but you can't remember their name to add them on Facebook.
I feel like I would definitely Amazon stock my own books, and just see how they were going. So it
I mean,
must
there's,
be it must be quite a few then. Many
it's
books.
definitely quite a few. Like, especially as the time has gone on, it's definitely in the multiple novels per year territory.
Well,
But again, it's that thing of, after a while, you just stop thinking about it, because as soon as one is out the gate, I'm probably already part way through planning whatever is next and setting up a new contract and work, because you know once that job is done, the pay also goes with it. It's like, oh, bye, you're out into the world. I guess I need to find a new way to get paid.
right.
Let's concentrate on that now.
So what advice would you give to anybody who is interested in becoming a ghostwriter and they're looking for their first commission? Is there any skill that they should work on, or way to network, or just what advice would you give?
Um, I would definitely suggest the freelancing platforms first as the best way to get in touch with clients. I would also caution people against being over eager starting out. I think going from my own personal experience, when I started out, I was very happy to take the first jobs that were thrown my way. It was like this big sort of deal of, oh, someone's interested in me. Yay, yay, I really, really want this. And it can be very tempting to sort of undersell yourself and to
Mm,
just just in order to get a gig, just go, oh yeah, yeah, we'll not worry too much about the money for this gig. Let's just get some words down. This is amazing. You're offering me a job. Hooray. And there's something about knowing your own value out
Mm,
the gate and not compromising on that. Certainly when you're starting out, like, you can't charge the earth when you have nothing to back you up. But there is also a thing that it can be pretty easy for people to take you for a ride in that regard. Adverts out there where people have I've seen adverts out there where people have literally had things like, oh, $5 and a review to write my story. It's like $5? $5 and a review? And it's like the whole thing is you're getting a review is the thing. So I'd say starting out, you really want to make sure you find the right clients and don't just jump on anything that's offered to you. And I think it's also a thing of making sure that you find clients that you like and who you want to keep working with
mm,
rather than jumping around between loads of different people. I found the best times I've had as a ghostwriter being with clients who I've known for a long time, who keep coming back
mm.
for more. You gain a rapport with them, you know what they want, which is very, very important because one of the big risks with every new client is that you go through this period, kind of like when you're doing collaborative writing. It's like, right, are our styles going to mesh? Because sometimes they don't. Sometimes, no matter how good a writer you are or what skills you bring to the table, sometimes you're just not going to be the writer they need. And that might not be any fault of your own, but find that you've got to find that and see if you have that spark with your client to be able to write with them. So yeah, I'd say it's very important to sort of know your worth and make sure that your client is someone that you can work with and feel good working with. Because once you're in it for the long haul, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, I think that is so important for people to recognize their value and their worth and not be too quick. But it's tough. It's tough when, especially when you're starting out, to really recognize what that means to
Mm.
value yourself and those partnerships. So I know you recently have branched out into work that does have your name on it. So
Yes.
how can people find you, your work, anything you'd like to pitch here at the end?
So my work, you can find it on the ever-present Amazon. The things I have out at the moment, I have the Time of the Dragon series written with Talia Beckett, who is another amazing author out there. It's a urban fantasy series we co-wrote together. Talia's a wonderful friend of mine that I've known from all the way back in the days of Bath when I was at university. I went off on the ghostwriting journey. She went off and trailblazed a self-publishing career, and she's been on me forever saying, oh, come on, you need to get your own name out there. You're doing great with this ghostwriting stuff, but I want to see your name on a book out there. And she finally cornered me by making me co-write with her on a series. I am so, so grateful for that. So yeah, Time of the Dragon series on Amazon. Dragon's Code is the first book there. And I have the beginnings of my very first series written myself coming out in December,
Ooh, and
which is
what's that title? I'll be sure to include it in the notes.
so that is my sci-fi series, Second Contact, Book One, Foreign Bodies.
Ooh, okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. Yeah, so I'll put those links down below if you want to check out the urban fantasy series or the upcoming sci-fi book that is just written by you. Thank you so much for coming on to the channel today to talk to us about something that I feel like people don't tend to talk about as an option for writers. So this was really illuminating, and I know that I appreciated the chance to get to talk to you again today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Well, for those of you out there, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Like this video if you like it, and I'll see you next week. Bye.